low end.
All right, well, let's move it on as we do alphabetically here. Let's talk about the Cincinnati Reds for a little bit. And I'm looking kind of at our overall rankings. At the highest red in our ranking is Suarez. Luis Castillo, who another guy I'm kicking myself about. I think I went with an offensive player instead of Luis Castillo, and he gets snapped up in the round. So I'm really annoyed with myself last year, but you live, you learn. Sonny Gray, Trevor Bauer, power coming over. Moustakas, Senzel, Castellanos. A lot of good pieces here. Actually, reading through the guide, kind of looking through the statistics is kind of it's my specialty. You're more the kind of the scout, and you use some analytics, but I really try to crunch numbers. I like what I'm seeing from the Reds. Do you agree, Eric?
I do. Well, spoiler for the end. I've got them winning the Central.
No kidding.
Uh,
Wow.
they are going to score a ton of runs, and they have probably one of the best rotations in the National League, definitely in the Central
Yeah.
as a whole. So yeah, Bauer's going to struggle a little bit more. I have him rated a little bit lower than a lot of people seem to in other places, just
Mm-hmm.
because he's a fly ball pitcher
Mm-hmm.
and he's in a very, very hitter friendly park. He also seems to have trouble controlling his emotions at times, and that can get the better of you. So
Sure.
I just think it's a recipe for disaster there for him.
That's a good tip, and that's another thing. Again, shameless plug for our fantasy baseball almanac and draft guide. And what I do in the football almanac, and what we try to do in the baseball almanac, in addition to like I was saying before, is kind of be more strategic with the tiers and winning draft day. That's the first component of it, and then of course the in-season advice. You win the season as well when you kind of tap right into me and Eric directly. But identifying guys to not screw you over in the early rounds. So you just said Bauer. You have some questions. It's not that he's a bad pitcher, but a fly ball pitcher in that park who can sometimes let his emotions get the best of him. Suddenly, maybe you're giving up a couple more home runs. A pitcher who's a flat-out really good pitcher, neither one of us would disagree with that. But the idea is that he carries a little bit more risk. So if you're choosing between a bunch of guys in the same tier, which we identify tiers in our book, and that's kind of part of our strategy, maybe you want to go with a guy with less risk when you're spending that high capital, right? That high draft pick on a pitcher. And so like try to get him at a good value, and that's kind of what we're leaving here. But I was surprised, Eric, when you kind of slotted him in the third tier, and I think that's exactly why. So it's a really good explanation. Castellanos, the signing there was interesting, and our guide is updated with that signing. What do you think about him coming over to this team?
I think we saw kind of a glimpse of what he could do when you got him out of that just death for hitters park in Detroit. And he did, he showed out in Chicago, and now he's going to just a bandbox where he should be able to, take a step from the 25 to 30 homer range, and he should be somewhere in the 30, 35-ish homer
Oh,
range. I
wow.
think he's got the power. I think he's got the ability to hit 40 playing where he is now, but I think he'll be somewhere in the mid 30s.
He's got the
But yeah, I like him a
power.
lot there. I
The
like him a lot
power.
there.
Yeah.
I think I actually went in and upgraded him in our rankings as soon as he signed there, just
Right.
because of what his numbers are going to do there.
Yeah, and then Senzel, I thought he did fantastic. Well, I mean, maybe not fantastic. Maybe that's a little bit too strong of a word, but I really liked what he did last year. I think he was on my roster at some point, kind of as a utility guy, but certainly by the end of the season, he was a regular starter. Moustakas being there, I think, is a nice add. I mean, I see what they've done in their lineup, but I think when I was reading the guide, I was most interested in their rotation because, like you said, I think they made some good moves, and it's getting a lot better now. This is always interesting. I feel like when you're investing in a pitcher, and especially a relief pitcher, and you're looking through, and maybe you miss out on like Kenley Jansen earlier, or whoever it is, right? Who do you go to next? And I feel like you go to the team that's emerging. And you see Iglesias there got, 34 saves last year, I'm reading. Strikeouts per nine was at 12 even there. He's a good guy to invest in, I think, as a reliever this year. Let me see where we have him. We have him a little bit down, but actually for our relievers, he's at a pretty high tier at 5. I think in me personally, I'd probably bump him up. Given what you just said about their offense, I think they'll be in a strong stance. But what do you think about him specifically at the relief position?
Yeah, I like Iglesias. I think he trended down a little bit last year. He struggled a bit, as everyone did with that long ball. As long as things kind of stabilize there, he should be good. I was actually kind of sitting back and hoping he got traded this year,
Mm.
just so I could see Michael Urmens and get a shot at the closer role, because I love that guy. He's playing center field. He's at times he's pinch hitting. He can throw out of the pen and really and bring it. And he's been really really good at pretty much all those things. So he's an interesting two-way player for them, and I would have loved to have seen him get a shot at the end the ninth.
Yeah, well, maybe next year, right? There's always injuries, right? So, hey, you just said, their ceiling, right? Winning the division. You thought that they were going to come out and win, and that's a bold prediction. That is a bold prediction. I haven't heard a lot of other people saying that, right? Especially with the competition here. What do you think their floor is at this point? They're not going to finish any worse than what?
I I can't see them finishing anything worse than third.
Wow.
Obviously, they're not going to end up in the basement. That's Pittsburgh's domain. They've got a force field around that.
Force field.
I think yeah. I mean, if things just go off the rails, for the pitching staff, or if somebody gets hurt, or certain things like that. But they've got too much firepower on offense that they should be able to overcome any deficiencies that do show up
Mm.
in that rotation. So yeah, I still see them at absolute worst, in third place, but I see them winning the division or at a minimum fighting for it, and pulling in a wild card.
Is there anybody unheralded on this roster that you like their sleeper potential? I mean, Senzel kind of sticks out to me, but what do you think? Is there somebody there, whether pitcher, whether hitter, or maybe a couple?
It's hard to say because they've got some pretty solid
Right.
names. You mentioned Senzel, and we actually dropped him a bit in the rankings just because he doesn't have a position right now.
Yeah.
Um, right now they filled everything between all the additions they have. He doesn't have a spot. He could be moved around a little bit, but he may not have an everyday position. So that's one option where he's going to kind of fall a bit unless they trade him. I'd say DeSclafani could be kind of a sleeper option for them. He showed a lot when he came back, and I like the kid if he stays healthy. I think that's a good add for a lot of teams that you could probably pick up in the very very late rounds without too many people knowing what you're doing.
Yep.